I'm going to be honest with you all. These are recorded in a set because it's my birthday in a couple of weeks, and I want to use next week to make the 1408 video. So I'm going to try my best to hide my bias, but this is going to be hard. The Lovers continues to be my favorite in the series so far, and the movie that made me want to review the series as a whole in the first place. Like the actual Werewolf movies, there's no wrong or right place to start, so I'll use the role explanation and the spoiler-free section of the review together like always, and you can just jump to this timestamp if you want to skip it. Don't worry if you do, I'll explain the Lover's role when it comes up in the film. So, let's get started. The Werewolf game, The Lovers, is the 5th entry in the series about a group of students kidnapped from their daily lives in order to play a life or death game of Werewolf. The rules to Werewolf are deceptively simple. Hidden in a group of players are 2 or more players who double as werewolves and are tasked with killing villagers every night. It's up to the villagers to determine who the werewolves are and execute them via a vote before night falls. If the villagers manage to execute the werewolves, then all surviving villagers win. If the werewolves should ever equal the number of villagers, then the werewolves win. To help the villagers in their endeavor, they're given a series of special roles in order to help and hinder them. The roles vary from game to game, but this game specifically, we're playing with this setup. One prophet, who can see one player's role every night, but only whether they're villagers or werewolves, not their special sub-roles. A medium, who can determine if the person they last voted out was a werewolf or not. A much more restricted kind of prophet. The bodyguard, who can pick one person to be protected from werewolf attacks during the night, but can never pick themselves. And for this game specifically, we're given Cupid, and by extension, the Lovers. The Cupid's job is to pick 2 players to spend the rest of the game as lovers, regardless of whether they're villagers or werewolves. The goal then changes for them because so long as the lovers are alive when the game ends, they'll be the winners. This brings us to the plot of our game. This round we follow Takano Ranko, who is given the unfavorable position of both lover and werewolf. Since her partner and Cupid are both villagers, it falls to them to manipulate the game completely into a werewolf victory, but ensure that all 3 of them make it out alive. It's honestly my favorite in the series because of the level of gameplay that happens in it, and the interpersonal relationships. It's the perfect mixture of both incredibly good character work and very good tension building through the game and the plans that are in place. I generally gloss over the downtime events, as it's usually just people bonding and trying to figure out who's the werewolf in this game, but it's impossible to ignore the relationships in this one specifically. Once again, there are no real antagonists in this story, not even the werewolves, just a group of people trying their best to survive, even at the expense of others. But it begins to show that there may, in fact, be much more of an antagonistic body coming into play in the form of the people running the game and the methods they use to do so. Because there is no character or plot overlap so far, this is a series that you can pick up and start from whichever entry interests you. And while I generally recommend the B-side if you want a great slasher, and the Villagers if you want a more intense, if a little confusing entry point, The Lovers serves as a masterful fusion of the two. The uncomfortability of normal students trying to survive no matter the cost, the machinations of each player and factions having to play every side, and the emotional damage and scars left by playing in a game like this. This is future me interrupting to say that I get it. I know that these movies are hard to find. Trust me. I know. I've had to do it twice. What I can say, though, is if you maybe search the text on the screen, you can find a place where they have this, and most of the later entries entirely subbed on it. Maybe. Anyway, back to the past. So, with all that praise out of the way, let's end the spoiler-free review and take a good long look at the werewolf game, Lovers. We open with beautiful orchestration, playing a slow but bright and hopeful tune as we go through several establishing shots of the area we'll be playing in this round. We then join our heroine Ranko as she awakens with the others that she'll be playing with. Immediately, a new wrench is thrown into the works as one of the players tries to take control of the situation until the TV begins to explain the rules. At this point, I'm going to assume that you know the rules of the game either from the earlier entries or from the beginning of this video, but in case you skipped it, they do introduce a new role into the game, the Cupid, who will pick 2 players to designate it lovers. In order to win, the lovers must be alive at the end of the game, like the fox from Crazy Fox. But if one is killed by either vote or a werewolf attack, then the other dies as well. As all of this is being explained, one player exclaims that this is their second time playing, which leads other players to declare that they are also survivors of a previous game. So this is kind of like Escape Room, Tournament of Champions, except unlike Escape Room, this one actually makes forward progress in its overall plot, and this is the anthology series of the two. Sorry, back to the point. They once again have a meeting where everyone goes around introducing themselves, still one of my favorite parts of this, please don't stop anytime soon, and declaring who's a prophet and who's the medium, which creates an interesting conflict when Torinosuke, a person whose name I will definitely mispronounce several times in this video, and his girlfriend Kana both claim to be mediums. After this session, Ranko meets up with Ichika and Hinata, the other lover and Cupid respectively, and they discuss their strategy going forward. But when Ranko asks if Ichika is a werewolf, we smash cut to the first round of voting. Now, the obvious first round antics occur, there's no information to go off of, so they just toss out accusations willy-nilly, until Riku tries to take control of the situation again. Riku was the one who tried to take command at the beginning and said that this wasn't his first game. He even goes so far as to claim that without him, the villagers have no chance of winning. Don't worry though, this isn't going to be a prison break situation with the Me Too crew from last time, as he gets voted out in the first round. Good job, guys. We then have a return to an old favorite though, as the kids begin to panic that his collar isn't strangling him, and the TV informs them that they'll have to do the killing themselves. We almost return to the uncomfortable murder scenes of the villagers in Beast Side, except this time a strong score accompanies it, which I think actually makes the scenes better. The score to this film is incredible, and I don't think there's a single time that it misses its intention. When the others fail to kill Kawaii, why did I swap names? With the knife given to them, it's actually Ichika who takes it and proceeds to murder him in cold blood as the others look on. This leads to the lovers arguing, and Ichika reveals that she likes the look of betrayal that appears on someone's face when they are killed. And that's why she did it before she storms off. Hinata and Renko discuss what they hope to get out of winning. Hinata has been diagnosed with terminal leukemia and hopes that with the money, she'll be able to find some new treatment, while Ranko's father put her family into terrible debt, and she wants to use the winnings to pay it off. After this, we get to meet our werewolves, Ranko and Torinosuke. They discuss their strategy, and Ranko asks if Torinosuke will be able to kill his girlfriend if he has to, which he says he could do easily, as they're not too serious. Torinosuke wants to target the lovers specifically, since they'll win even if the werewolves kill everyone else. But since they have nothing to base their guess off of, they end up going after Takumi, I think that was his name, who puts up a fight, and Torinosuke holds his arms as Ranko stabs him. There's a real weird moment here when Ranko stabs him, and her and Torinosuke are just really close together. Their faces are like inches apart, and for a second, I thought they were going to kiss while they were killing him. And then for another second, I thought that somehow Ranko had stabbed both of them, but they both end up just kind of disassociating from the event. The next day, they meet up and the prophets make their proclamations. Hinata declares that Shiori isn't a werewolf, while Subaru claims that Ranko isn't a werewolf. Kana and Torinosuke, as mediums, both declare that Kawaii was a villager. They have another strategy meeting, and I just want to say that every time I watch this movie, I cannot get over the fact that Ichika reminds me so much of the girl from Kakegurui. It's mostly the outfit and the hair, and I know they're only really barely similar in color scheme, but every time I watch it and I see Ichika on the screen, it's all I can think about. Anyway, sorry, on to the next vote. At the beginning, they all agree to just commit suicide if they're voted out, instead of making the others kill everyone, before Kana accuses Torinosuke of being the werewolf, and seems to be on the verge of winning when Torinosuke can't put together any real kind of defense. That is until Torinosuke says that she voted for him during the first vote, and that she's always been able to gain pity from others. When the vote is called, they vote Kana out. Despite their agreement, Kana refuses to leave and die, even calling out for and eventually grabbing on to Torinosuke, who sits quietly. After a moment, he gets up and pushes the others off of Kana before taking her in his arms and comforting her. Then he drags her over to the exit, opens the door, and tosses her out, where she's strangled by her collar. That night, Torinosuke accuses Ranko of being a lover, but thinks that she's with Subaru instead, to which she offers a solid counter-argument to show that this is all part of his plan. This ends up proving pretty useful when they attack Shiori, who informs him that Subaru and Sakuma are working together to beat them. When Shiori offers to do anything to save herself, Torinosuke tells her to die, which she refuses. He proceeds to slap her around the room repeatedly and eventually beat her to death with his bare hands, while Ranko looks on. I'm not going to show a lot of this for YouTube reasons, but also because this kill makes me genuinely uncomfortable to watch. I sometimes worry that this is how domestic disputes that become murders happen. The next morning at the meeting, Subaru makes his play by revealing that Ranko and Torinosuke are both werewolves. When he's called out on the fact that it's very unlikely that someone would find both werewolves 2 nights in a row, and Hinata says that she's found Kaede to be a werewolf, Kaede argues that she is in fact the bodyguard, which Subaru supports when he calls out that there are no other bodyguards. Ranko then proceeds to make what I think is the stupidest move in this entire game, and claims to be the bodyguard herself. After they break apart and meet up in their separate groups, Ichika points out that this was a very dumb move, and then offers to let Hinata die to split the prize money between the 2 of them instead of 3 of them, which Ranko instantly shuts down, prompting Ichika to reveal that she's trying to find and kill the people who run this game, and to do that she can't afford to die here. At the vote, Subaru continues to put down that Ranko is a werewolf and needs to be voted out when Sakuma betrays him and accuses Subaru instead. When Subaru accuses Sakuma of both being one of the lovers, to little effect, he also reveals that Sakuma is one of the people who helped them collect the kids who play in the games. To which Sakuma admits, yeah, he worked for the people above after a friend contacted him about it, and then tells him that Subaru has in fact seen the face of one of the higher-ups, and then ended up in a game with him and used that information to blackmail him into supporting him. When the vote is called, Subaru is the one voted out, and even seems to actually agree to walk out before he turns around and attacks Sakuma, saying that he deserves to die instead. Ranko then picks up the knife and proceeds to stab him in a rage. That night, they attack Sakuma in a hope to get some kind of information out of him. At this point, I have to say that if Kaede really is the guardian in this game, she's done an absolute shit job of it. You could argue that maybe she doesn't want to protect Sakuma because of his part in this, but anyone could have guessed that he would be the target if he wasn't a werewolf himself. So you would protect him just to keep your numbers up. But back on topic, Sakuma explains that the illegal betting system that operates around the werewolf game, and that when people make bets that they can't pay off, they're then allowed to offer their friends and family as players instead of paying off the debt. He then reveals that he was given up by his friend who brought him in when he fell too far into debt, and then informs Ranko that she was offered by her father, and that he even continues to bet on the games now, betting on her to win this one. Torinosuke then kicks him out of the building to die, before joining Ranko on the stairs to comfort her after her revelation. In the morning, Torinosuke realizes that Sakuma wasn't a lover, and I think at this point also realizes that he's lost the game. We even cut to him sitting in his room, looking up at nothing, waiting for his fate. To this day, after all these viewings, I still do not entirely understand Ranko's play here. They have the majority, and all they have to do is vote for Kaede, and that's it. They win. But Ranko instead offers Hinata as the lover, which she tearfully admits to and is promptly voted out. She is, I think, the only person to actually walk out of the door this game, continuing the proud tradition of the last one voted out being a goddamn hero. The screen reveals that the werewolves have won, but the lovers have survived, meaning the game is theirs. It's a genuinely sad moment because when you see Torinosuke look at Ranko, he doesn't seem angry or hurt. He seems almost sympathetic, like she had tried one last Hail Mary and it fails sort, and he thinks that they both lost. She even takes his hand and they both start crying before Torinosuke seems to realize the mistake that he's made and is killed. Ichika seems torn between happiness and crying when they're released, and they head up to the roof to see the sunrise. When Ichika begins to talk about how she'll use her share of the money to get to the people running the game, Ranko nonchalantly pushes her off the roof to her death. She then returns to the voting room and tells them that she wants to use her money to instead offer her little sister as a sacrifice to the werewolf game. The hopeful music returns as we once again look around the building that was home to this game, my favorite game of Werewolf so far, before Ranko says goodbye, and we say, until next time. I don't know what it is about this one that gets me so hyped every single time I watch it. I think it's a mixture of the greatest hits so far, mixed with some new build-ups that made all the difference. I said in my Prison Break video that the big issue came from the characters, specifically the guy who strong-armed the game and then ended up being isekai'd to literally no fanfare. Him and his brother really just took me out of the whole thing and made me feel like I was watching a worse version of Saw 2 instead of a werewolf movies. But The Lovers brings that back in spades. You have the fact that they're once again forced to kill themselves, which brings back that uncomfortable moment every vote. The return to neutral characters, which I've had comments saying that they prefer having some of the more defined characters, but I personally prefer the idea that they're all just people trying to survive, and not that any of them are purposely antagonistic. Even the werewolves, because they're given that role entirely by chance. You also have a much bigger build towards the people up top who run the games, and this entity has always been a presence, sure. There's not a game that goes by where someone doesn't declare war against them, but now they're becoming an interactable persona. They're people that the players potentially know. They make mistakes, and the player can even become one if they do end up taking Ranko's offer. And I can tell you that the latest entry in the series was titled The Werewolf Game, Death Game's Operator, implying that they'll continue to be an issue even if they're not the focus. Alright, I gotta start watching another movie, so let's go out with the most important thing that I can say in any video. Whether you like, comment, and subscribe or not, you're still a friend to me. Good night.